Hello everybody, welcome to Discussing Tabletop. It is June 1st, 2019, is our 114th episode. Me and Joe have just been doing this forever, as always, and it's our way. But joining us this week, we do have two special guests. We have Robin and Jacob from Flying Nightbear Games. Say hello, folks.
Hello, folks.
Hey there.
Thank you. So we're going to be talking. It's great. It's great. So we're going to be talking with them about their RPG Beyonder. That's what we're going to start out with today. And after that, we do have a couple of topics we want to handle. We will be talking a little bit about the fact it is International Tabletop Day, which for the second year in a row, it snuck up on me and Joe.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then we have a Smash City by Wizkids has been announced. They've got Metal Gear Solid, the board game. That was an interesting one to talk about. Cyberpunk Red starter set's coming out soon. So that's the latest.
Cyberpunk!
It's the latest installment in that RPG series. Usaopoly continues to show off really weird stuff with another It game. And then there's an Agatha Criste card game by Modiphius before we go into our regular segments. So, why don't we start off with talking about Beyonder? I guess the best place to start everything here is, why don't you two tell us about what Beyonder is?
That's a good question. So, Beyonder is, to give you the elevator pitch, it's a science fantasy system, or science fantasy setting, what I like to call alternate fantasy. It's a 2d10 single roll system, and it immerses you in a rich and complete world unlike anything you've ever played in before. So to get a bit more into it, we've been not we, to a certain extent. My dad has been building this since the 70s when he was in college. So the world that you'll be stepping into when you play this game is it's equivalently like fleshed out and fully realized to D&D, to the Forgotten Realms, which was started around the same time. It revolves around the 6 fundamental energies, which are kind of like analogous to our 4 fundamental forces, and the 6 guilds, which are just kind of like a cross between NASA and Starfleet. They're these big organizations that are devoted to the study of the energies. And you'll be playing as a channel who has the ability to manipulate the energies just using their own power. So it's very scientific thematically. It revolves a lot around exploration and discovery, solving problems through various methods. A lot of the creatures you run into are not, it's a, whatever, go kill it because it's attacking the townsfolk. It's, there's lots of different types of creatures. Most of them are neutral. Very few are evil, because there's not really a strong, good, evil, sort of dissection in our game. It's more gray and neutral. Is there anything in particular you want to know about? Mechanics, system, setting?
If we're talking about it, I guess the good way to start about it is, why don't we start with the basic mechanics. It's just a little bit of that, because, as much as I like to hate to say it, a great world setting is nothing without a mechanics to back it up that you can play in it, at least.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So our mechanics, we like to describe them as they're, remember, you ever played the game like Mastermind? With the 5 pegs, the different colors?
Yes, I know that.
Yeah, and it was it was a minute to learn, a lifetime to master. That was the phrase for Mastermind. And that's not exactly true of us, but it's more easy to get started, rewarding to continue. So the core of the game revolves around a 2d10 roll. Everything is single roll. So pretty much every action you do is going to be, you roll 2d10, you add them, it's not percentile, and you add whatever relevant modifiers you have to the situation, and you compare it to a difficulty, be it, the opponent's defense rating, or a flat difficulty if you're trying to perform a task. And the number by which you succeed gives you a different effect. So if I beat the difficulty by 3, I'm going to do the task less effectively, or I'll climb the wall more slowly, or I'll sneak more crappily, or I'll do less damage than if I'd beaten it by 10. That's the core element of the system in terms of rolling. Now, in terms of actual progression through time and, taking actions in a dynamic context, we use what's called the rhythm. So instead of having combat and other similar situations work where, you have your initiative order and it's, okay, Abel goes and then Baker goes and then blah, 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 down the line. There's a wheel, and the wheel is just moments. And there are 6 sort of like segments on the wheel. Everyone starts at segment 0, and then everyone declares their action, and that takes some number of moments to complete. So maybe if it takes 1 moment, I'll put myself on segment 1 of the wheel. If it takes 2, I'll put myself on segment 2. And then it's just like a clock. So you just tick around the face, you tick through each moment, and on each moment, every person who resolves their action there gets to resolve it, roll their relevant stuff, and redeclare. So it's much more dynamic and versatile, and I think it allows you to sort of explore different play styles more. So if you want to have that character that's super fast, and their whole thing is they're dashing around the fray and stabbing people before the big heavy hitter gets a chance to do anything, it's a lot more feasible to do that because your actions actually take less time than somebody else. Similarly, it allows you to be a little more tactical. You can stagger your actions so that, maybe you want to be hitting somebody relatively like every other moment to try and disrupt a power they're using. Maybe you need 6 moments to yourself because you're preparing a very powerful effect and it takes a while to cast.
Cool.
And if I could, Matt, I'll just add a little bit to Jacob's good description of this. What we did when we designed this, and this is like, we call it our 4th edition very often because we went through a number of iterations of the mechanics.
Okay.
Is we wanted the mechanics to be simple enough that it was easy to get into playing, but to have enough sort of grit to it that it supports actually doing things and accomplishing things, because when these guys were all young and sitting around the table with their friends on the weekends, that's what they always really loved, was this sense of accomplishment. So we wanted to have a real sense of accomplishment. So the numbers are important in that way. And so it really supports our world building. And in many ways, our world building is really kind of our focus. So we like the mechanics and we think they're pretty solid. But it really does, we try to emphasize the story and the world building in this. And we've got some stuff already out in our first 2 books, and we're planning another book that'll go more deeply into the world.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So that gives us to you've been working on this world for quite a while,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say is there a good summary, but is there a basic if you want someone to understand some basics of the world, what would you give for them for that, before the deep dive?
Do you want to cover that, Dad? I think you can speak a bit more to the world than I could.
I'll start off. So the world, and again, this sort of goes back to when these guys were young. The world is about exploration, but it's about exploration in several different ways. So it's exploring your character. So the system mechanics that we have allow you to create a real variety of characters. So you can be a really strong fighter or something like that, but you can also wield sort of magical like abilities and stuff like that. So you can mix and match what you want. So you can have a character type that's very much what you want. So that's kind of one exploration. Another is the world itself. So we've got a planet that has 8 continents. We fleshed out what are the continents, and
it has 8 segments to it. It's unknown exactly how many continents there are.
Okay.
I guess that's the way of saying we could
plug in on that.
We could add more if we wanted to.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what we do.
Don't tell anyone.
That's what we do. We're always, that's part of the exploration. So
yeah.
we've got 3 cities though that you could play in. They've been fleshed out to some degree, and we've got these 10 races, and you choose one of the races to play. And we've got some really great artwork for those, but we've also, each race is distinct, and the new book is going to be about fleshing out one of those races. It's sort of societies and norms and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's exploring that. So it's, it's sometimes it's about hack and slash, but mainly it's about exploring new places and finding new things, new creatures, learning about the world.
Cool.
Jake, is that?
Yeah. So one of the things I usually say, just if I'm talking to somebody about it at a con, is that it's a fantasy game with no elves, orcs, or spells. So it's, it has all the sort of same feel of a classical high fantasy game, but it's a completely unique setting that's more focused around science and exploration and discovery. It is a bit like, Starfleet, like I was saying earlier. It's fantasy Starfleet. Yeah.
No, and that's a really cool thing. I do like the idea that it's like you do take a direction that even the most, I would call it scientific fantasy doesn't take, that you embrace the fact that it is scientific fantasy kind of thing. You get a little bits of that in certain, classes and archetypes that are the study ones in various fantasies, but it never reflects upon it the way that when you guys, definitely when you guys were talking to me about how it worked at PAX Unplugged, it's a different direction. I like the way that you're taking it, definitely. It's really unique and interesting.
Yeah, and so I have only been a part of the team formally for about 2 years now, so I feel very comfortable sort of gushing about some parts of the system and world that they don't, because I didn't build them, so I can just say relatively bias-free. And I really like, one of the things that I really like about the game is that, like you were saying, it's not like there is a specific class that is or class, because we don't technically have classes, that's okay, you're the scholar and you study all this stuff and you're smart and that's your thing. Every single guild is about science fundamentally. And, there's even, you have the Soman's Guild who study body energy. And intuitively you think, oh, that means I can play a big tank and I'll walk around and I'll beat the crap out of people. And you can totally do that. But there's also a whole segment of that guild called the Tongues, I believe. And their whole focus is they are able to modify their sort of internal vocal structure to be able to replicate the speech sounds of any race on the continent. And they're extensively trained in diplomacy and essentially act as diplomats and ambassadors for the guilds. So there's lots of applications of all this stuff. It really allows you to build whatever character you want in terms of system and in terms of setting and the flavor of the character. And it really allows you to marry those two, is something I really like about the rule set.
Yeah. Now, this kind of segues into talking a little bit about your company in general, because this is in previous talking, this is your big first thing, is when did you get to the point where you're we're going to become a company, we're going to publish this kind of thing, as you did say, it's been in the making for a long time.
Yeah, so I can take a first cut at that. I started this probably about 40 years ago, and when I was in college, and new things like D&D were coming out, so they were brand new at the time. I, of course, like many other people, made up my own. I played it with my soon-to-be wife and then wife and her cousins and aunts and uncles at Fire Island, New York in the summer for holidays, and we had a great time. And then we had kids and we set it aside. And then the kids, when my oldest was about 10 or 12, found out that we had this game, so we pulled it out. And then about 10 years ago, my oldest son came to us and said, look, we should really make this into a game, put it out there for everybody, because they'd been playing it their entire lives. And all the kids from the neighborhood would come over to our house. Our house was the place where everybody would come on the weekends because they all wanted to play Beyonder. But about 10 years ago, to actually get to the point where I'm actually answering your question, Matt, about 10 years ago, we decided that we would get serious about it and make this into a game. And so we started going through the rules in a lot of detail. My son, Simon, Jacob's oldest brother, and one of Simon's oldest and best friends, Jordan Campbell, are the two who built the rule set for us. And that's sort of where we started, was the rule set and then a bestiary, which are, it's about 60 creatures, but these were all just some of the creatures that these guys met when they were playing when they were kids. So, does that give you an answer there, Matt?
That gives a pretty decent answer about how things evolved to what it is. Yeah. Quickly, Joe, do you have anything before I continue on?
No, go ahead. I'm finding this fascinating, but I don't have anything off the top of my head.
I always want to check in and make sure. Now,
I appreciate it.
So you are putting out more materials. You have your first couple of books out. You have the core, and you have the bestiary book, I believe. And was there another one? And yeah, those are the two right now. So
That's right.
You're definitely planning on more. Now, there's some questions about it, like, would you plan on things like more races? Is that like, would a different continent have different races that you'd be reflecting? Are you going to stick with the 10 there? If there would be exploration to other continents, would there be more guilds? Like, there's a lot of like things that could expand. I know, like, there's easy things like, well, I call it easy, but it's like I'm exploring more places, I can do more bestiary, I can talk about more locations. That stuff tends to be the easy part-ish. I don't know.
Yeah. It's accessible. It's there to take, definitely.
Yes, the accessible part.
So yeah, that's a really good question. We've definitely brainstormed a lot about that, about the other continents and what might open up there, and about other books in general, which honestly is not saying much because we have brainstormed a lot about everything. We've just talked over all of the world so much. So, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't want to reveal any hidden secrets, and Dad, please stop me if I'm, giving anything important away.
I will.
Good. So other continents or other segments of the planet, it wouldn't necessarily be new guilds. It would more be new people that didn't necessarily use the guilds or use that same sort of structure.
Okay.
So one of the books we've been thinking about for a while, one of the big areas we can dive into is, in addition to the guilds, there are what are called sorcerers. And this is just on the central continent of Tamara, where everything we have so far takes place. The guilds and the sorcerers are sort of naturally opposed. Guilds are all about science, scientific process, rigor, all that stuff. And they're pretty much exclusively populated and run by channels, who make up about 0.5% of the population. So there's this a little bit like elitist feel to them. Sorcerers, as they are called as an umbrella term, are a multitude of different sects that essentially practice what they call magic, and what the guilds emphatically disagree is magic. They see it as like science where you don't actually know what you're doing. Sorcerers had rote sort of gestures, incantations, other sorts of things like that they would memorize and repeat in order to achieve desired effects. There was a war between guilds and the various sects of sorcery about 100 years ago that basically the guilds killed off like all of the sorcerers. Mostly the only remaining sorcery sects are sort of sprawled up at the very top of the world at the Icy Waste. Which is also, incidentally, the only point where you can safely cross to the other segments of the world, which is part of why the guilds haven't really explored that yet. So if we're talking about sort of opening up play for new classes, as far as we have those, that is one of the ways we're thinking of going.
Okay. Because I think that's always like a balancing issue sometimes, is figuring out, new character stuff along with your new story stuff. It's like, and having the interests. So that's that portion of it. Did you think that if, like, because more creatures than others, would you think there would be more intelligent races in other places that would be options, too, on the same hand?
I definitely think there are. And there's a little bit of history on that, actually. So we already have, so a long time ago in our history, or several long times ago, there have been 3 invasions by these creatures total. But the people on the continent know of at least one other sentient race called the Luncheons. And they are essentially, rather than one soul or one consciousness occupying one body, they occupy many bodies, anywhere from 1, which is like incredibly rare in their society, to 2, 3, 4, up to like 100 or so. And if you look at our blog, you can see some of the history of these various wars, and see how it was essentially, it's almost similar to like an Ender's Game type situation, where the first war was started because the Luncheons came to our shores and they're like, I'm gonna kill this like one part of this creature's body. And the people on the continent were like, that's bad, because they're a whole person in and of themselves, which the Luncheons didn't understand. But yes, to answer your question, there are already some races out there. They're not fully like statted and specced out, but there are definitely others waiting beyond the spines of the ocean.
Cool. So, I think the big thing that we can talk about next is the upcoming stuff. You guys had just had a Kickstarter up for a little bit, which you put it back down because you were saying to me that you wanted to flesh some things out before you really put it out there. Do you want to talk to me about, like, what it is you were kickstarting and what the reasoning behind, the push-off is? Because, people would always want to know that, when things get canceled.
Yeah.
The reasons
yeah, absolutely. So what we were kickstarting was the first book since the first non-core book, essentially. Although, I guess the second non-core book, because the bestiary isn't really core. But it is a system and setting book that covers the Haolas specifically. So it's a lot of background on the race and cultural stuff and history, and also includes what we call ancestral abilities, which are racial abilities, to speak in more common terms. The reason we put off the Kickstarter, we're postponing it for a couple months or so, is essentially we're very excited about this game pretty much all the time, and we are all relatively talented, if we say so ourselves, game designers, but we're not marketing people. And essentially we realized that we needed to put more effort into we'd been putting a lot of effort into the book itself coming up to the Kickstarter, but we hadn't been putting enough into the Kickstarter itself. So realizing that, we wanted to take a step back, reevaluate, and sort of relaunch after we've had an appropriate time to lay the groundwork for a really successful Kickstarter.
Yeah, that makes sense then. I think that's one of the things that me and Joe tend to try to talk about, is that, the Kickstarter has been very good to the tabletop community, and it's not always the easiest tool to use, unfortunately.
No, but it's smart to know when to back off and retool before going forward with it.
Yeah,
that's really true. And it was not an easy decision to make, because we really, it feels like, well, no, we don't want to give up yet, because we don't tend to do that type of thing. But we really felt it was, like Jacob was saying, it was really the right decision to do to make it successful. We just need a little more time for it. So,
yeah,
right.
So I think the other thing I did want to handle about all this is I love your art.
Thanks.
You have some very good art. This is being just an entire side thing. Where did you come upon your art direction for everything? Because I think that's something that both me and Joe have talked about sometimes on the show here. In the modern tabletop community, art has become a big thing about this entire thing, much more than, let's say, like the classic D&Ds, which had interesting art, to say the least.
Yeah.
So, Jake, do you want to take that? Okay, I'll go.
I'll start, and then you can probably fill in a lot of information.
Sounds good.
So, both of my older brothers who worked on the game went to school up in Providence in Rhode Island, and they happened to go to school close to RISD. And the short version is we essentially made friends with a lot of RISD students who were just sort of getting their start. We went to the RISD street fair, art fair that happens, I think it was at the end of every semester. And basically, we talked to some people, we showed them our work, they got really excited about it, and we got the chance to sort of, well, first of all, because my brothers were in school at the time too, we were like, we should actually pay these people money, because that's good. So we got to make those connections, meet people who were excited about the product. And actually, the way the art for the bestiary came about is we just handed them the Word document, and they looked through, and we said, hey, whatever catches your fancy, just make some art for that.
Cool.
Is there anything else there, Dad? I feel like I'm...
Yeah, no, that was perfect. I think the only thing I'd add is the reason we gave the raw text to the artists is because we love the art, like you guys, we love art. And we have a lot of respect for artists, and we wanted them to get to choose the kind of thing that they worked on. I mean, within limits. I mean, there's a certain number of things we had in the book. So we wanted them to work on things that got them excited, and I think it shows in the work they did, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, no. Just seeing some of, on your site, the pictures of the bestiary stuff. I'm a sucker for creatures. So... you got some great things there. I love a good monster / creature that people can encounter in games.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, all the artwork looks amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, let's see here.
Well, I'm sorry, just to interject. The art is so important too because it tells the story. The words tell a story, but the art tells a story too. Because you look at the art, and you can just start to imagine this creature, and then you start to imagine the world they live in, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah,
agreed.
I think the last thing I really have to ask is in my mind right now is the 10 races that you came up with. What made you think of these races? Of course you have some that are pretty you've got a human, you've got a dwarf, you got others which fall into certain archetypes, but you do have some interesting ones on your list, I definitely have to say. The Kron, who are Cobra people. That's that's a little more than most people would do for the generalized snake people and things like that.
I think I don't have any answers for that. That was before my time.
So that was really an evolution. So, we've been playing the game for a number of years. And the guys, my kids and their friends, would make up different creatures over the years, and some of them would stick, and some of them would not, and some of them we turned into actual playable races. So when we got serious about making this into a product, we went through another discussion about which of these should we use going forward into the production version of the game, and we added some at that time. We came up with some of the names for these new creatures, and part of it was we wanted a variety of creatures. So part of the variety was actually having, like you said, a human and a dwarf, because, you don't expect that with other creatures that are very different. But then we have some that are very different. We have their differences in their physical makeup, but also different sizes of creatures, and they have a different kind of attunement to the 6 energies that Jacob talked about earlier.
I guess that's something also probably I should hit on, just a brief overview of the 6 energies. That's something I missed talking about from earlier. I forgot about that. I wanted to say that.
Yeah. So I can take that one. So there are 6 energies. They come in 3 pairs of opposing energies. The opposing energies are they're each 2 sides of a coin. So they each represent 1/2 of some whole. So the 3 general categories are we have the outer energies, which comprise physical things in the world, essentially the inner energies, which make up your inner experience, and then the ethereal energies, which are the energies that govern your connection to other energies. So outer energies are physic and body. So physic is the actual stuff of the world around you. People who have high affinity for physic are often, skilled with like a bow maybe, or a good juggler, but also a tinker, maybe somebody who can make devices. Someone with a high body score is somebody who's likely to be healthy, strong, fast. One interesting thing about our system is that we don't break it up. I know everyone's used to seeing like strength, dex, con, but we don't actually have that division. It's all just body. Then mental and emotion are the inner energies. They're pretty much exactly what you would think. Mental is recall, knowledge, intelligence, also ability to tap into the collective unconscious of the world. And emotion is ability to manipulate the emotions of yourself and others, as well as resistance to having your own emotions manipulated by others. And then there are the ethereal energies, which are spirit and shadow. And spirit it's very simple. Spirit binds energies together. Shadow dissipates energies apart. So people with high spirit scores tend to be very resilient, physically, partly, but also emotionally and mentally, and just sort of in a holistic sense. They can handle a lot of hardships that are thrown at them. Whereas shadow tend to be people with a high shadow affinity tend to be abnormally lucky. They're not really influenced as much by things that should affect them. So the example I always like to give is that shadow is the default sneaky energy. So if you want to be very sneaky, you would join the Umbrist Guild, who study shadow. But sneaky is not I crouch and you can't see me, which is my favorite Skyrim joke, obviously.
Yeah.
It's oh my god, where'd he go?
Yeah.
But Umbrists, the way they sneak is more like a really powerful Umbrist would live with a family for 10 years, and every morning they'd get out of their bed and eat breakfast with them and eat dinner with them and talk with them, and then they would leave one day and the family would never know they were there. That is how shadow works to make you sneaky. You just sort of slide off of the senses and memory of the people around you.
Okay, cool. Joe, did you have any questions that's come up with all this then? Just
unfortunately, no.
I'm usually pretty good at this.
I'm finding everything very interesting. I love the different races and stuff, but everything that just starts popping in my mind, unfortunately, as usual,
I've already handled it.
Yeah. That happens. We unfortunately think a lot alike.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
You're a good team.
Yeah. All right. I think that's everything I wanted to hit on with talking to you guys. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about your company, Beyond, or anything right now that I might not have handled or prompted you for this one?
So one thing we touched on this briefly, but I was talking about how Beyonder allows you to play exactly the character you want to play. Mm-hmm. And there really is an incredible depth of customization that our system allows for. So I was talking about moments before, the moment system, the rhythm, the moment system, where every moment in combat is a second, basically. But it doesn't have to be me, Bob, fighting you, Jane, in a combat, and every moment is a second. You could just as easily play out an encounter that is every moment is a week. I am the Eastern Trade Empire, or the Eastern Empire, let's say, of the Kron, and you are the Southern sort of Kamari Kingdom. And when I make an attack, that's my army moving through this area of space to assault this fortress or something like that. In terms of powers, which are our analog to spells, reflecting the sort of scientific nature of the system and characters, we actually allow players to create new powers. So every power has attributes like range, number of targets, duration, the standard stuff like that. And maybe if you find a power that's heal, and it's this is a big group heal, so you stand in the center of a group of people and everyone within 10 yards, up to 5 people get healed this much. and you say, I like that, but I want my character to be like an in-combat person who does a lot of fighting themselves. You can create a new power by taking the same effect, decreasing the number of people it affects, and maybe decreasing the time that it takes you to activate, and then you get a bigger bonus and you get to just heal yourself, but you do it more. So it really allows you to like build things around your character concept, which I really value, because we all have those character concepts that systems have a lot of different approaches. In modern 5e, it's like homebrew. So, it's a very simple system, easy to tack things on. In stuff like Apocalypse World, it's narrative, because pretty much everything is handled narratively. But this really builds in the ability to create those things in the system, and that's, I think, pretty rewarding.
Cool. Yeah. That's definitely something I was missing there, is like just that overview of the character creation. So, All right. Well, thank you, both of you, for joining us today. I believe, Robin, you have to get going, and Jacob, you were going to stick around with us. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yep, you bet. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. So why don't we switch over here? Hey, that transition was perfect. Sometimes I get this correctly. So, yeah. Let's move on, though, because we do have a couple more topics that we want to handle here. Tabletop Day. It's today. I love Tabletop Day, but I think both of us have been really bad at participating on it in the last couple years.
Didn't realize it was today.
They don't have advertisement for it
neither.
anymore. No, like the first couple of years, I would see a bunch of stuff around on the internet for it. Now,
or local stores,
yeah,
would mention something, or the local library even would have something out about it.
that was true. Yeah, but like lately, it's just been welp. It's going on.
Here we are.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, part of me worries that, like, it was a cool idea, but is it sticking around as much as we would like it as a cool idea? That's the thing I've been thinking about with, especially, like, this time. Again, the past 2 years, just not learning about it right away. Like, nowhere do I normally check out for information on Tabletop. Did people talk about this for weeks to come? So,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I have had some good times with Tabletop Day, so I can say that at least.
I think.
Oh yeah, we've had a lot of great times
Oh,
with Tabletop Day. It's just
I was gonna say, go ahead.
Sorry.
Jacob.
Oh no, it's fine. I already talked for like half an hour, so please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, then go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just saying we've had plenty of fun with Tabletop Day, and it, unfortunately, like you said, with the lack of advertisement for it, it kind of sneaks up on you anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I-
And I think it is. It's sort of a top-down thing where I think people get excited when there's something happening. It's more exciting to say it's Tabletop Day, so I get to go down to the library and there's like 5 people there running different games, rather than it's Tabletop Day. That's cool. It's up to, yeah, it's a bit grassroots and a bit top-down, I guess. If something's happening, people are more inclined to be excited.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, like, the one game store we go to up in our area in Bethlehem, they normally have one great sales for Tabletop Day as well. So you think there would be like some advertising on that end? Oh, hey, because they normally have like buy one get one 50% off on things. So that's kind of the disappointing part too. Of wish there wouldn't have me coming up, because maybe I would have made plans to go do that.
Well, I think it's also like I don't hear as much from the founders of this as well, because it was really the people that started this and pushed it forward were Geek and Sundry and Will Wheaton, because he was doing the tabletop show. And if it wasn't for them, it probably wouldn't have started. And it seemed for a couple years after that it was taking more of a life on its own, which is, I think, what they wanted it to do. But I feel like that life of its own hasn't really evolved as much as it could. You know, it's sort of maybe they should do more for it still, and maybe they aren't. I don't know, because
True.
I don't know. I like Tabletop Day. I'm glad it's going on again. I don't know. It might be another day another year that I'm not really doing a lot for it, though, because I don't know if on my schedule I can put it in, because it's just suddenly like, oh, it's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Agreed.
so,
Unfortunately.
yeah, but if you're out there and you still have time, check it out. It's technically International Tabletop Day today, so go at least play a board game somewhere, even if it's Swiss with friends. Celebrate.
Agreed.
It's a good day for it. All right, so that I just want to briefly handle that one because I was surprised it was Tabletop Day. Definitely. I want to talk Smash City by Wizkids, and the reason I want to talk about this one is, don't we already have this game, in a way? Isn't it?
I kind of felt the same way when I saw that.
Yeah, it's Smash Up by I can't remember who's by now, but Smash Up. Okay, so it's different to a degree, but it's pretty similar still. The fact that it's you're playing monsters, fighting in a city, destroying it. And it's dice based too.
Right.
Just by looking at the information they're providing, I don't know if, because even the name, Smash City, how much does this yell to me that this is different than Smash Up, which is a very popular, giant monster-based game. Granted, the new Godzilla just came out, and maybe they were planning on capitalizing on that a little bit. Oh, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm thinking about why they did it now, is capitalize on that.
I mean, that's a great idea.
Oh, no, yeah.
I love Godzilla. I would totally buy into that.
Well, that's the thing, is, sometimes when you see these things, you're like, it's a business idea. It's a business idea more than anything, which, I mean, it makes sense. I can't fault them for that. It's just It
almost reminds me of King of Tokyo smashed up with Smash Up.
Oh, that's right. King of Tokyo was the one I was really thinking of. Dang it. That's the one I was really thinking of.
That was a fun one.
Oh, yeah, I like King of Tokyo. Now, granted, this one's a little different, that they, rather than having, monster standees, they have building standees, so... from the images I've seen of it. But... And the thing is, they're announcing this and having it available. So, they're very quick to, being like, yeah, here it is.
Well, it does say it's kind of an homage to all the giant monsters from Japan, so...
So was King of Tokyo.
Yeah, I know, but obviously. But I'm saying, with Godzilla coming out, that kind of ties in.
Yeah. I think the other thing that is a little differently here is it looks like it involves a little bit of using the dice to knock things over, it looks like they're trying to do. So, I mean, maybe, a dexterity mechanic is the thing that's going to make them stand out.
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like we almost never use dice for anything other than generating a random number.
Yeah, and the dice itself, because they're your monster dice, using them for dexterity mechanic is actually one of the places where I would say dexterity mechanic actually might work, because a lot of times it's you're flipping things or flicking things, and I really hate those because I'm bad at those.
I feel
okay, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel so honestly, I know nothing about this game. I just looked it up when you mentioned it right now.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of interesting room when you consider dice as not just for generating random numbers. I don't know, maybe one monster has really big dice and you can easily knock stuff over. One monster has weird shaped dice. It opens a lot of interesting doors.
Yeah, that's true. I think they're keeping. It looks like they're trying to keep it a little more basic for this first one, which is understandable. But if it is successful and similar to King of Tokyo or like or things like Smash Up and stuff like that, that got a lot of expansions, maybe it will open its way to more of those, and you'll get some more interesting things like that. So,
yeah.
I mean, Joe, you were gonna say it then too.
No, I agree. Because a lot of the times when you have those deck-based games, it's like, I don't feel like cleaning up the entire room because like we played a game. Or how many pieces did we lose this time?
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. Smash City. It is available now. Maybe it's it on the surface. I'm gonna say it. It looks similar, but maybe just different enough to be something unique that you want to try out. So, take a look for yourself, judge it, and figure it out. But we want to move right along because there is one I wanted to talk about because it's technically on pre-order now, but I hadn't seen much of it until now. There's a Metal Gear Solid board game that's going to come out. It's a cooperative sandbox stealth game with dozens of missions and VR missions. That's the way they describe it. So it's like, okay, so they're trying to definitely recreate the video game. Which actually is something I'm happy about, because a lot of times when you get, like, a source, or, like, a licensed thing, you get a lot of, like, weird stuff. I will give the example, because we'll be talking about Usaopoly. It Clue.
Yes.
Which is a thing someone is doing.
It Clue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, like the clown movie? The
Yes.
Stephen King? Are you serious?
We are serious.
We had talked about it previously too, that they had announced it.
We saw that, we were like, it's the same time as they announced It Monopoly and like some other It games, like the Monopoly one. I'm good with it. It's Monopoly.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, you
Clue,
don't do anything with Monopoly.
I still can't believe that one. No. The thing is, now I haven't heard a lot about it, and it's supposed to be more of a miniatures board game. They are taking their pre-orders from it, and it's from IDW Games, so good on them. It's neat. It sounds like they're actually doing something interesting with it. I mean, personally, I don't think I've heard of a lot of stealth games when it comes to board games as a major mechanic in a board game. So I'll be happy to see how that would work once we're finally getting a good release and we can get a handle on the rules or something.
Yeah, the only other games I can really think of are, I know there was a Kickstarter a while back for a board game that was like an asymmetric versus game where one player, everything took place in the dark, and one player had night vision goggles, and the others got to use like light strategically around the board. Okay. And then there was also Nyctophobia, which came out just this past year, which was meant to be played. It was the same basic idea, but it was everyone. You play. It's like a cabin in the woods slasher.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the what's the video game, the asymmetric versus one that's like popular right now?
Dead by Daylight's I think the one.
Dead by Daylight, yeah.
Yes.
It's that same concept, but it's like the survivors just are blindfolded the whole game, and the hunter is not.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to see how you sort of create those same feelings.
Yeah, and this one I think is a more interesting take on it too, because it's a fully co-op and it's a miniatures board game. And we've seen a lot of miniatures board games where I don't think stealth was the focus. Most of the time it's like combat is the focus in a lot of these. It's like it's either a fantasy or a sci-fi tend to be these major ones where you're like maybe you're exploring, but most of the time what you're doing is murdering the crap out of stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting, because like the original miniatures board game was Warhammer, right?
Yeah.
It was all about just killing the crap out of the other team. So yeah, I'll be interested to see how that plays out.
Yeah, where like you have to. I'm interested to see how much they're going to do for like detection mechanics, as they say it. Like, will certain amounts of movement have more sound? Is it just going to be visual? Like, it's got me interested in learning more and seeing if, like, maybe mechanics like this could be applied to other board games instead of just, like, a Metal Gear Solid one. Which, again, I do think, just by reading it, hey, I'm on board for this licensed material. They're doing. It seems like they're on the right track, at least with it. So yeah, the pre-order is you're getting like some exclusive minis. So if you really want those, go ahead. But I mean, I don't know if I can't find an exact date they're announcing for it yet. So it's more they've announced it and they're throwing out the English for a second there. I broke myself.
Oh no.
Pre-order.
There it is.
I never claimed to be an English major. I went for math when I went to college. Yeah. Joe, do you have either of you have anything else you want to kind of add to this one here? I think I've kind of hit on the major points of it's interesting.
Yes. I'd say interesting as well.
Yeah, that's the thing is, like, getting into the video game, I played the original. I played that one, the Metal Gear Solid one that it's actually going to be based off of. I remember that one back on the PlayStation. So it does fill me with, like, a nostalgia, too. I'm curious as to why now. It has been quite a while. I mean, this is a very good board game market right now, so I can understand that, it being a good market for it. But Konami...
Odd timing.
Yeah, Konami doesn't do anything good anymore for video games, you know? And so I can only, like, imagine someone in IDW played a Metal Gear Solid game, loved it, and decided on this. It's like the only... It's like my idea of this. Because otherwise...
They come in one day, they're like, guys...
I played this game. It was one of the classics on my PS4 or something like that.
Oh my god.
God, I hate that that's accurate. I hate that that's accurate when I say that. Anyway, yeah. So whatever reason, coming out. It's a co-op game. You can keep an eye on it. The pre-order is out now if you really want those extra miniatures. I don't actually know if the pre-order is actually out. They've announced the pre-order out, but I'm trying to find a way to click on it, but I can't find it. So that's a weird one. Anyway, pre-order. Keep an eye on it. It's somewhere on IDW's website. They always have a confusing website for me.
Yeah.
Let's talk Cyberpunk, because
Yes.
it's not a good week without talking about some more RPGs. We've already talked about one, but I love talking RPGs. It's my favorite. So,
and I love Cyberpunk. It was the game that first RPG I ever played was Cyberpunk.
Yeah. So, they have coming out in August is Cyberpunk Red. It's the Jumpstart Kick. So it's the starter, effectively. It's the newest edition of it, and it's supposed to be set in the years between Cyberpunk 2020, the original, and which I didn't actually even know that it was based on the video game, the Cyberpunk 2077. I've heard of Cyberpunk 2077 that's coming out as a big name video game, but I did not assume it was actually connected to the RPG. But apparently it is. Yeah. So I mean that's an excitable thing that we're... Is it just me, or are we getting like a lot of new editions of like classic RPGs at this year? I feel like this is what, the fourth or fifth that we've kind of mentioned?
Something like that, yeah.
Because it normally these are a lot more spread out. Because there's a new Pathfinder, a new Big Eyes Small Mouth, new Shadowrun. I mean, technically it's not this year, but just in the last year, we got the new Vampire 5th edition came out pretty recently, and now a new Cyberpunk. I don't know.
Maybe with the influx of 5e and how popular that's been,
People are taking advantage of it.
yeah, they're like, hey, if you like that,
Yeah.
try another one.
Yeah. And OSRs are a whole genre now, like old school revival games. Just
That's true.
it's making a big hit.
Yeah, no. There's definitely a lot of even classic tabletop games that are either getting newer editions or updates and stuff. I've noticed a few of them. Like we did get another edition of Arkham Horror, which I think I was all on the board for the second edition, but there was a first edition that's pretty ancient.
Oh. Is this the card-based one that you're talking about now?
For the board game?
For Arkham Horror? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the really big one that does take forever.
Yes.
It's a forever...
6 hours.
Yeah, it's 6 hours, but it's no Risk or, what's the other,
Oh, I know which one you're talking about. I can't think of the name now either.
Yeah, give me a second, because a friend of ours I saw got it recently, and I can check my...
It's kind of
Twilight
like
Imperium.
Yeah, Twilight Imperium.
Oh.
Do you have a day? That's not enough time.
You have a weekend, maybe?
Yes. Pushing it.
So yeah, I actually hadn't realized here that Cyberpunk 2077 was based on that. So that's cool. I mean, that's a good... it seems like one of the creators of it is working on it. So I mean, they're sticking with the original people on it, which is good. I guess we'll know more when this, as they say, Jumpstart kit comes out. We'll know more. That's coming out in August, and it's going to be like the thing for Cyberpunk Red. So, they're saying it's going to have like a lore and adventure book, a basic rule book, 6 pre-generated characters, some maps, dice, all the things that you have in a normal starter set, basically. So, we'll have to keep an eye on that one too, just because I know you'll definitely keep an eye on it, Joe, since Cyberpunk's your baby when it comes to RPGs.
Like I said, it was the first game I ever played. So, first role-playing game I ever played.
So,
fond memories, and lots of interesting adult themes in it as well.
I will agree that it's got unusual adult themes. Unnecessarily sometimes.
I feel like every cyberpunk setting is like that. It's just like this. It's part of it is being dystopian,
Yeah, no. I think Cyberpunk was a lot more of that, like the weird red light districts, weird sex shops, things from like some of those
cybernetic enhancement add-ons.
Yeah,
that weren't that important to the game, but they did. But they somehow did give you a charisma boost.
Well, I was saying like that a lot of like the 80s, 90s cyberpunk stuff always would hint. Some of it would hint on that kind of stuff, without showing anything because ratings and stuff. But like it's the game that's hinting on that, definitely. Cyberpunk much more than some of the other similar genres, because it's less realistic. Counterpart Shadowrun doesn't have as much of that stuff because I guess it's got that less realistic because it's science fantasy. But
I think it's also interesting. It seems to be also a revival of just in general this more futuristic games too. Because like last week I found the one Kickstarter that was the future was kind of like that in the same genre and everything.
I don't know. I think like when we look at genres of role-playing games as they've been coming out, especially because there are a lot of Kickstarters, we're finding a lot more nowadays. And there's been a lot of unique, I think, genres that have been kind of invented here and there, which are really interesting to see. Like, I think we've talked about, like, on some of the Kickstarters we've mentioned, like, there was... we talked about one that was just a noir, and then, like, a supernatural noir. And then we have, like, a modern-day noir game, which is, like... It's not something you talk about as much because noir is always you think about like the 20s, 1930s, going against mobs and stuff like that. You don't think
Right.
about modern, but see, those are just an example of how things have been expanding a lot, and coming back to like I would almost call like Beyonder what you have is like a fantasy science, because it's the opposite direction. Like the science, like the science fantasy, I always think of that as like the sci-fi with fantasy mixed into it, and you're more of a fantasy with like a little bit of science mixed in, and that's something that it's what people are doing now for RPGs, is we're inventing a lot of genres of stuff and giving people a lot of opportunities, and it's for someone that loves, a lot of this stuff, I'm very happy about, stuff, and I guess it's also, I'm not against the classics coming back just because it's where we came from.
Yeah. And like with so many games and so many people playing now, there's room for all of that and more. It's the awesome thing.
Yeah. That, one person can even like have so many different games, that you can pick up. Like, I'm running like 5 different systems, with different times with different people, or maybe like having short sessions over the course of the year. I guess the thing I have to say is I don't hit as many of those. They still are out there, but not as many of those like epic years-long campaigns exist, unless it's like people can only play a couple of times a year kind of thing. Then they stay around, but for those groups that can meet regularly, I don't think we're getting as many of those, just because people want to try a lot more.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's opportunity cost. If you only played D&D, 30 years ago, you'd be like, oh, I'm not playing. I don't even know what was out 30 years ago, but I'm not playing like one of these 2 other systems. But now it's like, I'm missing out on the new Pathfinder, I'm missing out on Shadowrun, I'm missing out on Beyonder, and Blades in the Dark, and Dread, and like a million other things.
Yeah, the list goes on at this point in time, and there are a lot of successful Kickstarters out there of various RPG systems that are very interesting, because the fact is, like, a lot of independent people, like you guys with Beyonder, put out a really great book. It's got a lot of art and stuff, so you're on the more high end. But there are some people out there that can publish a system just in PDF with more relatively simple art and stuff, and I can't fault them, because sometimes you take a look at what they got and it's really good stuff still,
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same spit and polish as, unfortunately, because maybe they don't have that opportunity, but they can still throw stuff out there that'd be fun to play.
Yeah.
So I think we have a lot of variety out there now. It's glad to. I'm glad to see Cyberpunk back. I think that was, as Shadowrun kept going, I had worried that we wouldn't see much more of that one. As much as I prefer Shadowrun to Cyberpunk when it comes to my futuristic, games like that. It's sometimes sad to see ones that have a lot of legacy go away too. I don't know. Anyway. Alright, got a couple more quick topics here, since we still have some time. I want to talk about, oh boy, Usaopoly has just been doing 1 billion of these. I guess it's for the movie. They're doing another It game, It Evil Below. So, I think this is the 3rd one? No, this is the 4th one. They have the Clue, the Monopoly, a card game, and this one now. It's granted, the 2nd one is coming out this year. So, I mean, I guess it's the right time to do it. I'm not going to argue that. But do we need so many?
No.
But it will make them a lot of money.
I'm sure. It's, again, they have the license for it, and it's the right point in time, so...
Yeah.
It's a 2 to 7 player, ages 17 and up. So they are definitely making an adult game. So good on them on that one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things, is you don't see as many of those more adult-oriented games either. Which, I mean, I understand. With the tabletop revolution, it's been more of a family revolution, too. There's a lot more families going into a lot of these games, so... You might not want to aim for those ages. You might want to aim for, like, if you're going for more adult, maybe it's like 12, 13 up. so you don't see as many of these 17-up ones. So apparently, like, you're playing as the kids going against Pennywise. It's more of like, it's got some custom dice, so it's got like a dice mechanic to it. Using your abilities to overcome challenges. It's $30. I mean, I'd be more interested in this one than the Monopoly and the Clue games. I'm just gonna say it.
Yeah, at least it's a little more unique.
Yeah, it isn't a game that already exists with different art.
Well,
Yeah.
the Monopolies, like, that's become like one of those things. It's like when you see something else be Monopoly, it's like, oh yeah, it's Monopoly. You know?
Monopoly.
It's like a celebrity being on The Simpsons. It's like, they've made it now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a Monopoly game.
Mm-hmm. There's a billion of them, and so it's like, in Monopoly's, one of those games that everybody usually has at least one copy of, so, like, you get your favorite for whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Or a couple of them.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I'm still going to fault them for their Clue one. I don't even know where to go with that one. That monstrosity of a thing that they came up with. I don't know how you're going to play it. Is it like the horrible murderous clown you're trying to prove is like real? I don't know.
It's like, no, who's the killer? Is it Billy or Sarah or the giant evil clown with the knife?
I think they're trying to be
It's
like
actually the space spider.
the space spider.
Crap.
It's the turtle.
It's the turtle all along.
So anyway,
That was the true villain.
It's a die strategy game. Yay! I feel like Usaopoly, because they've made themselves known a lot lately with licenses. I feel like they're doing some good things, and then they do some things which I just question their sanity, but, there are a couple of game companies that I questioned their sanity a couple of times.
Yeah, well.
Wizards, Steve Jackson Games. I love your stuff, both of you, but your sanity sometimes, I wonder. I like a better note. One more topic. I like a better note. There's an Agatha Christie Death on the Cards. It's a generalistic Agatha Christie game by Modiphius, who I forgot did board games and card games, truthfully speaking. Modiphius just seemingly does role-playing games most of the time.
It's been a little while since they put something not role-playing out.
Yes. They've got this interesting kind of like... I might call it cartoony art a little bit, which I don't mind, for doing a card game for mystery, bluffing, and deduction based on Agatha Christie's stuff. And they're not doing just one specific one. So that's kind of interesting, because they're definitely taking on, Perot, Marble, and some of her other ones, which I recognize like half of them. I'm gonna say that there. After Miss Marble and Perot, I'm recognize the Tumpuses, and then you lost me on the rest of her characters. I'm sorry. She did a lot of stuff. So yeah,
it's an interesting blend of genres, because there's definitely a fan base that really gets into like Agatha Christie, and my brother actually loves Poirot, and I've seen like some of the TV show. I really liked it, but it feels like, from what I've seen of the game and what you've said, it's more along the lines of Avalon or Coup or something, or one of those types of games.
Yeah.
I feel like those are disparate audiences.
Yeah, no, it's kind of interesting, because I think, like, they're trying to take on those mechanics of games like that, but maybe twist it in a direction of, like, a murder mystery, but you're still sort of, like, your detectives working together, but maybe you're not necessarily all the same kind of detective, too, because that's another thing about it, is Agatha Christie wrote a lot of detective stories, but if you look at them, they're intrinsically a lot different the way they do it, you know? Like, Poirot and Miss Marple are very different. Miss Marple is like, if you would compare her to anything, it's like Murder, She Wrote. That's one that, like, people will remember a lot of, you know? It's like, she wanders into murder, and she's the one that they don't expect to be able to solve it, and she kind of just, like, does her little thing and comes out with the answer. While Poirot is kind of like your private investigator that works with the police a lot of times, you know, like, kind of closer to your Sherlock Holmes kind of type. And those are very different types of detectives, too. So, and again, I'm, like, I know Tommy and Tuppence a little bit because my mother likes them and watched one of their TV series, and I happened to catch some of it. And they're, like, you know, weekend detectives is the best way to describe them, kind of thing, you know? Married couple that ends up... And I don't know any of the other characters off the top of my head, but... it's 80 cards. The illustration, like, the artwork, as I said, it's a little cartoony, but it's very interesting artwork on it, too. They have a whole bunch of cards for it. It's coming out in Christmas. I'd say, you know... I'd be interesting to try it once, is what I'm going to say to it. I would be interesting to try it, see how it would work, and see if it would interest me more. Like, if I would get a chance to go to a game store or somewhere and try it out, that might be where it would you know, either get my interest or not for me.
Yeah, I don't know Agatha Christie at all, so
I'll say, you know, if you can catch any of David Suchan's Poirot on Masterpiece, he did a really good job. They've ended it now, but he did a lot of the Poirot stories, and he did a very good job of the character. You know, if you catch any version of Murder of the Orient Express, I think his is one of the best. The recent one, I wasn't a huge fan of. It was okay, and there's like the really classic one, which is good. But I mean, that's a classic story.
right.
Anyway, our regular segments to finish out today. So we have a couple regular segments we normally throw out here and we talk about a little bit. Our first more normal reg segments is our normal deep discussion. We don't have any game that we had a chance to sit down with, review, break down a little bit. So how about we move on to our week in tabletop? We'll do that one next. Jacob, did you have anything in tabletop related? I mean, beyond working on it, you know?
Yeah, yes, actually. So, funnily enough, I run a semi-regular 5e campaign. We meet when we get a chance, usually every 2 to 4 weeks. We got to play this last weekend. I actually had some friends visiting, and they stopped in and NPC'd some characters. It was very good. We had a really good time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see here. I think, Joe, you and I, we got the chance to play Elder Sign on Sunday with the group over on our Sundays at Tabletop. That was fun. Elder Sign, if you don't know it, it's a lighter version of Arkham Horror, but it's dice-based instead of card-based. So it captures a lot of the same, you know, Cthulhian myth and, you know, all that stuff. It's if you know Arkham Horror, you'd understand a lot of the mechanics and ideas of Elder Sign. It's dice-based instead of card-based. Did we do anything last Saturday? We did.
No, I don't believe we did we?
I thought I showed up. We did Frontline Comrade.
Oh, right, we did, yes, you're right.
Mm-hmm. Which was
I lost horribly.
Yes. I don't know if we talked about it on the show here. It's a little card game where I guess it's supposed to be like communist era, and your commanding officer is basically forced marching you. I think it's communist era, like in World War II. So you're like you're going on the Russian front, and your commodore is basically shoving you off into the battle fire, and it's the object is to be the last one standing, with all the weapons fighting.
It's a cool little card game.
We all died. He died first, and then the rest,
yes.
and the other two of us that were playing, we died afterwards. together at the same attack.
The game.
Yeah, no, you can actually have that happen where everybody dies at the same time. We died at the same time.
Yeah. I died first, and then the other two took both of themselves out. So it was like, well, at least I don't feel as bad.
Nobody wins! Yay!
Nobody wins. And then I had the 2 normal role-playing games. Of course, I had D&D with you, Joe, which was a very role-playing heavy session. They all got back to town after exploring for a while. So that was
Even though
fun.
you were trying to push us a little past that to get us to do some other stuff.
I didn't know if the one person was going to be able to come up the next week, and they were part of the storyline we were doing, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a chance for more role-playing after the bit. You can get back to town and do more again. You're not gone for long this time. And then
I understood that.
And I did
everyone was just like, but we want to do more.
I know. I'll try to get more opportunities for you too. I keep trying to remember that. And then I did have Vampire, in which the vampires have united with a group of other supernatural creatures with the plan to kill a sleeping monstrosity under the city of New York. They decided that was a great idea. And so
that sounds very entertaining.
Oh, mm-hmm. Basically, they have they have the sword of Dracula, and it's made to kill basically powerful demons. And there is a powerful vampire-ish thing below the city of New York that's sleeping. And they're like, we should get rid of it before it would wake up again. Uh-huh. So, yeah, it's a horrible flesh beast, basically composed of, the many things it devoured. And so they've gotten into a fight with a lot of those. And so, yeah, that's fun. That's where we left off in the middle of that battle. Yeah. Yep.
That game always sounds very interesting.
Yeah. Yep. Uh-huh. It always takes weird turns. I have to say that. I've taken a lot of weird turns in that game. Let me put it this way. They're genetically engineered were-cockroach. They loaded it up with a vehicle cannon. So it's taking out a lot of stuff then. That is enough to say it.
You have my attention.
You had my attention at were-cockroach friend. Which I do 2 voices for him. I have his normal voice, where he talks kind of like he's from the Midwest a little bit now. You know, he serves the Great Lord Cockroach. And then when I've got a monstrosity, I like my monstrosity voice of, I've had him talk like this the entire time! And it's fun, because they're like, that's horrifying. I can imagine a giant cockroach talking to me now. A 9-foot-tall cockroach talking to me. Anyway, no. Both games are fun. Kickstarter Corner. Me and Joe like to shout out some Kickstarters before the end of the day. I have one. Joe, do you have one to shout out today?
Yeah. Give me a moment.
Mm-hmm. Which we will, I will say, we will keep an eye out for Beyond and shout them out when it comes out next month.
Soon.
Yep.
So, I found a cute little game called Spaceship Zoo.
Okay.
It's a card game. It is 28 days to go. They're little more than halfway to their goal.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, hungry creatures have escaped their galactic zoo enclosure, leaving creatures to fend for themselves in a dangerous environment. It's basically you're trying to empty your hand before everyone else by having your creatures eat your opponent's creatures.
Okay.
Interesting, cutesy art. It is for 5+, so it is kid-friendly.
Ah, yeah. It's always good. Neat.
Yeah, I thought it looked interesting, and wanted to give a shout-out.
Yeah, cool. The one I was going to shout out is one that just looks pretty. That's why I want to shout it out mainly. It looks a little interesting, too. I'm going to butcher this, because it's butterfly in French, and I know that. It's papillon. I'm probably butchering that a little bit. So it's a board game with little... let me put the link into the chat here, into the Twitch chat. So it's a game about having a little 3D garden. So it's actually like little 3D flower garden and butterflies on it and things like that. So it looks like it's a very good-looking game. Apparently, like, they do say the people that did this is their second time campaigning it, because there was some kind of mistake in the first Kickstarter, the way they did that. So they planned out the relaunch with the Kickstarter people. They've got 12 days to go. They've hit their funding. They're pretty high up there on their funding. I think they've reached 500%. So they definitely got their funding.
Good job.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, I think Colossal Games, they're like a medium company, I would call them, maybe. Medium to high independent, one of those type of companies. So they're still in that Kickstarter range from, information I know of them. And they do a few other interesting things. But this one looks neat. It's all about, like, it's building, drafting tiles, making a garden, and gaining butterflies, kind of things like that, attracted to the flowers you do. So it's interesting. There are more mechanics to it than this, like, 48 butterflies and 8 flower stands. It's a lot of butterfly little things to clip on there. So it's neat. If you're interested in that one and it sounds interesting, check it out. All right, it's time for our final segment, Ask the Table, which is what we say that if anybody ever out there has a question to throw into the Twitch chat here. We don't get a lot of questions because most of the time that we get questions, we answer them right away. But a few times we do get a question that is appropriate here to the show. I don't have one this week. But if you're out there watching on Twitch, go ahead and ask it now. Or if you are come up with a question for us at any time, you can send it to either Joe or me at our Twitters, on my Discord. You could put it in the description of my YouTube video when this goes up on YouTube during this next week. You can always throw it in the chat here the next day. And there's also Discussing Tabletop at yahoo.com. If you have a question for us, send it to us. We'll answer to the best of our degree, and if we feel like it's something appropriate to throw into a more in-depth discussion, we'll do it here. We're always glad to talk to you guys out there about tabletop or anything else and help you out as best. Or nerdy stuff, because we're big nerds. So.
What? No, I'm not a nerd.
Look, I could have gone into depths about some of these things in very weird, nerdy directions. I could have told you stories, about some of these things. Wasn't going to get into it because it was a little off topic, more than we needed to be. There's levels of off topic I try not to do. I try to behave myself. Doesn't always work.
Try to keep to, like, level 1 off topic.
Yeah.
That doesn't always work.
Oh my god. I think there's a few times we've gotten to like level 8 op topic and we're like, where the hell did we get here? Wait a second. We were talking about something else entirely. Let's wheel back to there. How do we get here?
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks Jacob for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Same thanks along once again to your father Robin for joining us too.
Absolutely.
We'd love to have you on again sometime if you ever want to, like, stop in, talk stuff, or just to talk stuff, or if, like, around your next Kickstarter or another project you want to come in and talk about those too. Love to have you on.
Yeah, we would love to be back. Absolutely.
Cool. Once again, thank you, Joe, as usual, for joining me.
Of course.
The two of us will definitely be back next week talking more tabletop. And you can check out my schedule below, or my links below for the rest of the things for myself, if you want to catch me doing other various tabletop things, or just doing some other stuff in general. And the YouTube stuff always has some great things up there for checking out anyway. So, everybody have a great rest of a Saturday, and we'll see you next week.
Go play some tabletop for Tabletop Day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So, bye everyone.
Bye.